What does your worst case scenario look like? What did your rock bottom look like? I've given so much thought to the recent Matthew Perry headlines, and I really wanted to share my musings with the people that I care about. Every single one of us are entitled to our feelings, and honestly, everybody's worst case scenario is going to look different. For me, my worst case scenario was ending up in a coma after a failed reversal. And none of the medical professionals were listening to me when I kept saying that something was wrong. And then when I did wake up after 10 days, I had no idea what was going on or where I was. I lay for days with tubes down my throat because my lungs had collapsed. I couldn't walk. I was swollen up like a balloon. The pain was unbelievable. I had tubes everywhere, and I really did not feel like I had the strength to fight. In that moment, and honestly for months afterwards, I wished that I hadn't been resuscitated on the operating table twice. My worst case scenario wasn't living with an ostomy. It was having to fight for my life. It was the fear of going back to the ICU, needing more surgery, or slipping back into a coma. It was dying and leaving my family behind. If I'm truly honest, my worst case scenario on a number of days was being alive, but it wasn't having an ileostomy bag. It saddens me that for Matthew Perry, his worst case scenario wasn't living a life shackled to addiction, a life destroyed by chasing feelings that aren't real, or being found dead on the floor from an overdose by your family or friends, or how they would ever come to terms with that. It was having a colostomy bag. I've seen both worlds. As an addiction doctor for over 20 years, I wouldn't wish that on anyone. Addiction destroys lives. It destroys communities. It destroys families. Addiction certainly doesn't save lives. It robs us of everything, right down to our dignity and our respect. Ostomies do save lives time and time again, as they did for Matthew Perry. I feel so sad that a life of never being comfortable in your own skin, running from your truth and doing everything in your power to escape reality isn't worst case scenario enough. But I guess that was his or is his reality. I don't imagine that Matthew Perry was educated well around living with an ostomy. He wasn't taught how to thrive with an ostomy. So he struggled, and I've no doubt that he felt incredibly alone. I can certainly understand that feeling because at times I felt very alone. It's the reason actually why I started DocLeBrocq, to help others not feel so alone in their journeys. I found the first year particularly hard. Some days I hated this body that housed me, and I hated how much it had failed me. There were times when I had blowouts, leaks, or public catastrophes that I felt the shame and the trauma of living with an ostomy was the most unfair thing in the world. But that's the thing with trauma, right? It's personal, it's subjective, and it happens when our experience of an event that's so physically or emotionally harmful or even life-threatening that it's our body's ability to cope that becomes overwhelmed. Even though the event passes, trauma has lasting adverse effects on our person's mind, the physical, social, emotional, and our spiritual well-being. I'm sad for Matthew Perry that his ostomy story wasn't more positive. I'm also sad as a therapist that his therapist didn't help him see that his ostomy saved his life from the death of a bowel perforation and from the slow death of drug addiction, or indeed the sudden death of a drug overdose. What I'm not sad about, though, is how many people have come forward and have started talking about their stories of survival. Ostomates all over the world are carrying their bags, like Prada purses. Ostomates are photographing their ostomies in different exotic locations, like the garden gnome craze a few years ago. So whilst his story may not have been favourable to him wearing an ostomy with pride, people are being forced to talk about something taboo that nobody has ever really previously wanted to talk about. A number of people have expressed to me feeling triggered by the recent media frenzy, and some people have been plunged into a shame spiral and are having, a trauma response to the negativity around his story. So what I'd like to do in a response to this is give away free access to my course, Finding Normalcy. Now, the course was initially designed to help female ostomates connect to how they feel living with an ostomy. It addresses how an ostomy can truly affect a woman's self-esteem, confidence, and body positivity, or maybe the lack thereof. And it normalizes the concept of being betrayed by the body that houses us. It also confronts the question of, can I ever really accept this? Now, although it was written for female ostomates, I'm really happy to gift this to any male ostomate who feels that they've struggled accepting their new normal or accepting how they feel with regard to the recent, public crisis around having an ostomy. The language is directed towards women, but the content can be used across the gender spectrum. If you'd like to gain access to this course for free, please go to www.doclebrocq.com/gold. I'll spell that, DocLeBrocq, DocLeBrocq.com/gold, doclebrocq.com/gold, and sign up, and I will send you a copy of my 3-hour course so that you can hopefully, get a little bit of an opportunity to connect and see a little bit about what I do. I really want to thank you for being a part of my journey and for allowing me to be a part of yours.